Welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We have our presentation tonight. We have Dr. Abbey Herringshaw, clinical psychologist with Project AFECT, the Autism Family Empowerment, Coaching and Training with Stanford Medicine Children's Health. In this workshop, participants will learn about how social narratives can help children prepare for a range of new and challenging situations, allowing them to better regulate their behavior and emotions. But first, before we start with this presentation, I want to briefly talk about what the FRC, the Family Resource Center of San Mateo County, offers. Next slide. So the FRC, also known as a little shorter, we serve children, families who have children with disabilities or neurodiverse needs between the ages of 0 to 22. We are staffed by parents and caregivers of children and young adults with disabilities and are or neurodiverse. Our team provides support, information, resources, and referrals to navigate the systems. We also offer trainings like this one, support groups, a resource binder, a monthly newsletter, and other services. I want to give a disclaimer that the Family Resource Center is not a legal firm and legal services agency, and we cannot provide any legal advice. Any information provided by the resource centers should not be considered a means of taking the place of legal advice, and that must be obtained through an attorney. We are funded in part by the California Department of Education, Special Education Division, and the Department of Developmental Services. We invite you all to connect with us, and we're going to put in our contact information in the chat. And I think this is all for me. So please, I'll let you take it away. Abby.
Hello, thank you for that, Patricia. My name is Dr. Abbey Herringshaw. I'm a clinical psychologist in developmental behavioral pediatrics. I want to thank you all for having me tonight and for joining us. I'm coming from the Project AFECT team, along with my Project AFECT team colleagues, Nadia Lopez and Dr. Ingrid Lin, who will be helping us during the breakout room activities. Project AFECT is a grant funded partially through the California Department of Developmental Disabilities that we have in the Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics Department at Stanford Children's Health. We help families that have received a new autism diagnosis navigate services and community resources. And we also put on workshops like this. So thank you again for having us. So today I'm presenting on social narratives and my own preferred way to make them using what I think is a very simple 4-step approach. So with that, let's get started. So first, what are social narratives? So generally speaking, we're talking about a short story that describes a particular situation, thinking probably this is a situation your child is going to have to navigate and that might be new for them or we're expecting to be challenging for some reason. So we'll describe that situation in the story. We'll describe the social norms of that situation and expected behavior for that situation, amongst other things. There are a lot of different definitions of social narratives out there and ways to create them. And there is also kind of the original social stories. You might notice that we're not using the term social story. Social stories were created by Carol Gray. She's kind of the OG of this, and I'll provide some links to some of her work towards the end with additional resources. That is a trademark term, so it's a much easier term to say, but we are not technically creating social stories or talking about social stories today. We're talking about this larger umbrella term of social narratives, which is this kind of general approach. Social stories have some pretty specific criteria that you have to follow in order to be considered that. So thinking about this larger umbrella term of this more general approach of a social narrative, some common characteristics of social narratives in that respect. They're typically individualized for specific learners. There are a lot of pre-made social narratives out there and social stories. I think oftentimes it's worth the time to individualize them. I think they work best in that way, and research kind of, when they look at these being used to maximum effect, do look at stories that have been individualized for specific kiddos. So not necessarily always, but to me, it's an important element. They're typically going to include pictures and visuals to boost learning. Generally speaking, they're written from the first person perspective of the learner. So if you're a parent, that would be of your child, although that's, again, not necessarily always the case. And they may comment on the thoughts or emotions of others. So that's largely where that social part comes in. Although these can be used to address social situations very effectively and to explain social norms, as we'll see in just a minute, they can also be used very effectively in situations where social skills aren't necessarily the primary goal. And again, this is a larger umbrella term that includes other more specific definitions and criteria. So there's other kind of trademarked special recipes for social narratives that are out there. Again, social stories is the big original one from Carol Gray. Carol Gray also created comic strip conversations, which is a shorter kind of comic book version. Social autopsies and power cards are other similar approaches that are out there. And so I do want to make clear that we're not following the criteria of any of these specific ones listed here tonight. We're going to be talking about a more general approach to create social narratives. All right. So background and research on, again, this broader approach of social narratives. Social narratives are considered an evidence-based practice for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. That's where this approach, this narrative story approach, was first piloted. I do like clinically to use social stories with kids besides children with autism spectrum disorder. I find just in general, if I'm trying to explain a pretty complicated concept and I'm thinking, is this too much for this child? Are they too young? Are they going to really understand this? I can get a lot more across in the social story or social narrative kind of approach. For example, my niece, who is completely typically developing when she was about 6, had her appendix removed, and her mom and I created a little social story for her about going to get that surgery, just because that was a scary, novel thing for a 6-year-old to do. And it was a lot of information, more than we could just sit down and probably tell her and she would remember. So this was a very effective way to kind of set the expectations and social norms there for her. So can be used with different kiddos, but they've most been studied in individuals with autism spectrum disorder. They have proven research benefits for individuals ages 3 through 22. There are relatively few studies with adults, so that's not to say we don't think they work with adults. They probably do. We just haven't done a lot of studies to prove that that's the case. And again, outside of social skills, even though social is right there in the name, we can really address a lot of different things using a social narrative. So again, research studies have shown that a social narrative approach can effectively address social skills, communication skills, behavior, challenging behavior, school readiness and academic outcomes, play skills, and adaptive skills, among other things. And they have also been shown to effectively both reduce problematic behaviors and actively build and promote positive behaviors that we want to see more of. Advantages of social narratives. You'll notice there's no citations here. These are from my perspective, necessarily not individually researched ones, but just clinically, what do I love the most about social stories as someone who uses social stories a lot? It provides information and sets expectations in advance. So it's something you want to do in advance to help regulate behavior and emotions for when the actual situation presents. So anyone who's here who might have attended any of my other workshops on behavior, the ABCs of behavior, this is an AB approach. This is an ahead of time before the situation has occurred approach. This is not supposed to be a C in response to behavior. This is something that effectively helps provide information and set expectations in advance. But again, when we do that, kiddos can better regulate the behavior and emotions when that actual situation presents. They're less likely to feel overwhelmed or anxious in that new setting. And they're more likely to feel like they know exactly what to expect and what they should do, which is setting them up for success, basically. The visual support element of it is really advantageous, I think. So a story format with visual aids allows the learners to understand more complex information than verbal explanations alone. So like I mentioned, whenever I find myself explaining a really dense concept to a child, and I was like, this is too much. You are not going to remember this. This is too hard. We can get a lot more complex information across in this format than just talking to someone. I also like that we can kind of use consistent language and messaging very effectively with the social story. So if you're just trying to talk something out with your child, feel like you have to come up with those words again every single time you do it. It's like reinventing the wheel. And I think an approach of sitting down and writing a social story is you sit down once, you think, what's the best way to explain this to my child? Write it down, and then you don't have to come up with it again every single time. You have it done, right? And then you can also call back to that language later in the moment to provide effective reminders. So I like to talk about using kind of like buzzwords or certain phrases consistently if we want what we want kids to do or what they should expect. Put those kind of phrases into your social story. And then later, when you're in the actual situation, we can say, remember, we're going to stay calm, or remember, we'll ask for help, and kind of use that language very effectively. So kids are like, oh yeah, we talked about this in a very effective way. All right. One thing I wanted to comment on, because this is a question I get often, a lot of times we are creating social stories for situations that we think our child is going to be anxious about. And sometimes parents ask me, is that a good thing to do, or is telling them in advance going to make it even worse? So some parents worry their children might become really anxious or upset when we read this book and about an anxiety-provoking event, and that might make things worse overall. And is that really worth it? I am always pretty much an advocate of preparing in advance, with one exception that we will go over, but for these reasons. When I think about this, I always think the reaction to the story is going to be less intense than the reaction to the actual situation, right? It's not great to hear about the boogeyman, but it's less scary than meeting the boogeyman, right? So that situation is going to be a little bit less intense. And that's especially the case if that situation presents in real life and it's a surprise, like we blindside them, right? Then we're going to get the most intense reaction. And would be able to address then that reaction in a controlled setting ahead of time. So like at home versus in the actual setting, which might be like out and about and in public, right? So let's say we're writing about getting a haircut. Even if kiddo gets a little bit upset, it's easier to deal with that at home than it is when we're at the hair salon. And then repeated exposure to that idea at home in that controlled setting allows them time to get used to the idea, so that by the time we get to the haircut, hopefully the reaction is better than it would have been otherwise. So for those reasons, I'm pretty much always an advocate of preparing and letting kids know in advance. The one exception to that rule, I will say, and actually had this come up with a family this week, when letting them know in advance is going to make it pretty much impossible to get them to go to that event, and the event is of high importance. And I think the situation this comes up with the most frequently is a kiddo who's going to refuse to go into a doctor's office and like physically fight you if they know they need to get like a shot or a vaccine, and that child is large enough that you cannot easily just carry them in there. That would be like my one exception, where I would say maybe it's easier to just spring it on them. Other than that, I am always in favor of preparing kiddos in advance, even if they're going to be a little unhappy at first about this information. It's still going to be a better outcome in the long term, in my opinion. Okay, so all of that said, what I want to present for you today is my favorite 4-step outline for a social narrative. I am all in favor of not reinventing the wheel whenever I can. That said, this is something I have come up with on my own because I feel like it is simple, it's easy to follow, and it fits almost every situation. So I will say I know some of the other approaches that are out there. I think this is simpler than a lot of the mainstream approaches or the already kind of published trademark approaches, and that it really does fit well and it's easy to use. That said, I do want to be clear that this is just my preferred method. I would like to maybe do research on this one day, but this particular method is not trademarked. It's not researched individually, and it's not a trademark social story approach. So I just want to give that disclaimer. So that said, the 4-step outline that I like to follow is first, what is happening and why. And we're going to go over each of these. So briefly explaining to your child what is happening or about to happen and why that is happening, what they should expect to happen in that situation, what appropriate behaviors we would like for them to do in that situation, and then ending on a high note, what's in it for them. So any possible rewards or reinforcers, benefits for them if they do indeed engage in that appropriate behavior that we suggested for them in the section before. And again, I feel like this is adaptable to fit many different situations. So I want to go over a couple examples here, and I have 2 very different examples that I pulled at the beginning here. So this first one is going to be a very concrete situation. The dentist is one of my most popular social stories. I feel like that is a struggle for a lot of kids. And then we're going to compare that to a social story for a much more abstract situation. So I usually start with the title page, and as you'll notice here, I don't feel like these need to be anything fancy. I typically make my social stories just in PowerPoint. They look fairly simple. I think they're still highly effective in that way. So this is just a PowerPoint slide that I created, pretty simple. I usually create a title page with a title, and I like to write the kiddo's name on the front. Sometimes kids think that's exciting, like, oh, it's my special book. So that's usually what I fill in for a special story for. So what is happening and why? In this situation, this is a pretty short explanation. The dentist is like a doctor for your teeth. They help me keep my teeth big and strong. It's the only page for this section for this one. That's really all we need here. We want to let them know, why is this happening? The dentist is not like some weird medieval torture chamber, right? We're only taking them there not to be mean, but because it's important. What to expect when we go there. So the first step of going to the dentist, I go check in and wait. They will call my name when they're ready for me. We start getting into what to expect again here and what actually happens during the appointment. For dentists, this is by far the longest section. What is so tricky about dentists for a lot of our kiddos, especially kiddos on the spectrum, but also typically developing adults who don't like the dentist? There's a lot of weird sensations and feelings and sounds and things, right? There's a lot of sensory elements. So we go pretty in depth, or I go pretty in depth here and actually cut a couple pages out for the sake of shortening this presentation. But I went pretty in depth here because I think that's the most critical part for something like this, is for kids to know what to expect. So I'll sit in a big chair that leans back so the dentist can see all my teeth. There'll be a bright light that helps the dentist see all of my teeth. Sometimes kiddos I work with, they let them wear sunglasses. If that bright light, again, is a pretty strong sensory element, if that is bothersome, a lot of times they might be able to wear sunglasses. The first time I made this, that kiddo we put that in. I might be able to wear sunglasses to help block some of the light. They'll put a special napkin on me to keep my shirt clean. They'll use some tools to take care of my teeth. One tool is a scraper and a mirror. This gets yucky germs off my teeth. This may feel a little funny, but it does not hurt as long as I keep my mouth open and stay nice and still. So we're still in what to expect. There's a little bit of crossover in what we want them to do. That's okay. I wouldn't get too worried if some of those sections start blending together. We don't need to be too strict or rigid about doing them separately in order, as long as we feel like we're adequately addressing all. And again, just letting kiddos know, this is going to be an unusual sensory experience. It shouldn't hurt. Another tool is a special toothbrush and water sprayer. These clean my teeth. There may also be a funny vacuum straw to suck out the water. These may make different buzzing sounds. That's okay. It may tickle a little bit, but it doesn't hurt. So again, we're hearing all these weird buzzing sounds, all these instruments are coming into our mouth. Oh, I know about that. I know what that is. I can stay nice and calm. It's not going to hurt me. The dentist may floss my teeth. This is string that goes between my teeth. It gets the bad germs unstuck from between my teeth. So again, giving a little bit of why here. It's okay, once again, to kind of bleed over into sections as appropriate. The floss feels a little funny, but it does not hurt as long as I stay nice and still. I might also get fluoride. So I really like to, when I write, try to plan for different contingencies. I always think if we're spent all this time going through like what to expect, and we say, this is what's going to happen, here's the schedule, here's what should happen, then all of a sudden something different happens, that could really throw a kiddo into a tailspin, as you might imagine, right? So I try to, within reason, plan for as many different possibilities and to write them in as possibilities so that if something is different than what we say, or if something somewhat unexpected happens, kiddos aren't totally thrown by it. So I might also get fluoride just in case. We didn't know if that was going to happen, but just in case, we didn't want him to be nervous about it. So fluoride is like a special shield for my teeth, keeps them strong. Fluoride might come in special flavors like bubble gum or grape. It can be painted onto teeth or put in a mouth tray. So again, trying to cover all the different things that could happen here. It might taste and smell a little funny, but it does not hurt. I have to sit still until the fluoride is at full strength and ready to protect my teeth. So that was all section 2, what to expect. Again, for something like this, that's by far the most important and longest section. And now we just have 1 page each for each of these last 2 sections. So what they should do: dentists are nice. They're here to help my teeth stay strong and healthy. It helps the teeth doctors if I stay very still and keep my mouth wide open. I will be done faster if I stay very still. I will try to stay calm and still. I will get to see my mom again soon. And again, assuming this was a time mom wasn't able to go back, if we know for a fact that a parent's able to go back with you, again, this is where individualization, I think, is important. But that's all we have for what they should do, is really stay still, stay calm, keep your mouth open. Those are the major points for the dentist. And then what's in it for them? So a lot of dentists have a treasure chest at the end. Again, the kiddo I originally wrote this one for, their dentist did have that. We knew it would be there. So I could pick a toy from the treasure chest. My mom will be proud of me. To me, like mom and dad will be proud of me is something I write in almost every social story. One of the low-hanging fruits there. And then any kind of natural consequences. My teeth will be stronger than ever, right? That's why we were saying this was important. So a natural outcome of this. So that is all, each of our 4 sections for the more concrete situation, the dentist. This next situation is a lot more abstract. So I just wanted to show you guys a very different situation you could use social stories for. So this was written for a kiddo that would get upset if other children had the same favorites that she did. It seemed like she thought, like, and one particular one was her favorite animals were whales, and she did not want other people's favorite animals to be whales. That seemed like only one person could have it, and she would get quite angry about that. So this social story was written to address that kind of belief. So again, we have an intro page here, what is happening and why. There's a little more explanation in this first part for an abstract situation like this, right? Whereas this was just 1 page for dentists. They're there to help make your teeth strong. Just a little more explaining that needs to happen here. So I like many things, but a favorite is something I like best of all. I get to choose which things are my favorite. And this one was created as kind of like a workbook that you could complete too, which is another option or something you can do. So you could fill in my favorite animals. Again, the first person I made this for, her favorite animals were whales, her favorite color, her favorite food, and we left a couple for whatever she wanted to come up with here too, my favorite toy or movie or whatever thing she wanted to do. And then again, explaining everyone has favorites and everyone gets to choose their favorite things for themselves. I do not get to pick for anyone but myself. So kind of setting a little explanation here. My mommy has favorite things. She gets to pick her favorites herself. I do not get to decide for her. So trying to provide some specific concrete examples to go with this abstract idea. So we went through this whole exercise of filling in the workbook with mom, just like we did for her. Here are mom's favorite colors, her favorite food, those kind of things. And some of them might have been the same as the daughters were, some were a little different. We also did this for this family for dad. So what is his favorite color, animals, food, and 2 other ones you could fill in. So that was all in that first section, what is happening and why, kind of setting the stage. For something that's abstract, some of these first intro sections, there might be, again, a little more overlap. I wouldn't get worried if you're like, I don't know if this goes in section 1 or 2, as long as we're kind of covering our bases here. So moving into what to expect, everyone gets to pick their own favorites and things that they like. I can't tell anyone else what they are supposed to like. So are setting the expectation. I'm going to encounter other people that like different things. I will not get to tell them what they're supposed to like. Sometimes other people will like different things than me. That's okay. Sometimes other people will like the same things as me, or even have the same favorite things. That's okay too. And this is a place where I think the visual aids kind of really support this idea. They have different toys in the first one. The second one, they both have the same toy, but they're both happy. They're getting along. We can stay calm here. So we're really adding to the comprehension and the understanding through the visuals we chose here. Everyone is allowed to like whatever they want and to pick their own favorite things. So again, still on what to expect. Now we're moving in what they should do. If someone likes the same thing as me, or if I feel upset about what someone else likes, I should stay calm, be kind, and remember that everyone gets to pick their own favorites themselves. I can take a break or ask an adult for help if I feel upset about what someone else likes. And as we get to section 3, we'll cover this last part, but I do like to add in there a little statement about if things start going wrong, if I start getting nervous, if I start getting upset, what should I do? So we kind of address that here. And then this last section again, what's in it for them? Everything will be fine, even when other people like the same things as me. I should try to stay calm and let everyone pick their favorites themselves. Mommy will be really proud of me if I stay calm, no matter what other people like. So there's weren't as clear benefits, like there's no toy at the end of this one. It's more like the social benefits. That's what we covered here in the last one. Okay, so 2 very different examples there, and we'll see a lot of other examples as we go through each section. So that said, just a few general tips for writing as we go through each of the sections. So the first general tip I would say, provide the amount of information you think is important for your child to understand. Again, meet them where they're at. Some kids are going to do better and will need more information. Some kiddos don't need that much. Try to kind of meet them where they're at as far as what do I think they actually need to know to navigate this situation effectively. Definitely important to try and tailor your language and expectations to fit your child's developmental and language level. So when I'm writing social narratives with parents, the first thing I ask when we start a section is, how would you explain this to your child? Because parents know their children. They know what words they understand, what words they don't. So how would you put that into terms they'll understand? And this is, again, getting at why I think individualization is so important. There can be social narratives you find online that maybe are really well done and worked amazingly with the child they were originally written for, but you could have a very different child than that, and they might not be a good fit for your child. And then focus on the most important elements. We want to work on providing a clear, consistent message throughout the social narrative. And again, think, what is the message my child most needs to hear to navigate successfully? Pictures worth 1,000 words. The saying is really true here. Add pictures or other visuals. It helps keep children's interest and boosts understanding. Google image search is just fine. You might notice I have a lot of these little clip art people that look similar. I write a lot of social stories, so I do subscribe to a couple stock image that I've sites that I pay money for. That's how I get all these cute ones that look similar. You do not need those to make the social story work. Even some of the examples you see have just Google images, like the dentist social story is an example, right? So they don't have to be fancy. Some visuals can be really as important or more important than the actual text to help kiddos understand. So an example here, I think this is from a sharing social story. And I really went out of my way to find one where we have the same two people. It's clear in the first picture on the left, one child has the toy. We can see in the second picture on the right, same two children. Now the other child has that toy. Because we're explaining turns. And what if this child doesn't know what the word turn really means? We can really get that information from this picture, right? One person has it, then the other one has it. They're not fighting each other. They're both happy. They're nicely taking turns. That image, that idea is really conveyed through this image. And so I think it goes a long way in setting an expectation here. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we don't. If we think through the story before, you might have noticed there were several slides of just kids looking happy. That's fine sometimes too. So it just really depends on the situation. But sometimes they're really important and really can add a lot as far as comprehension. And as with everything else, we want to individualize the pictures from different kiddos. Some kiddos in particular might really benefit from actual photos of specific places or people in the story, especially for something like dentist, doctor's appointment. When I write things like that, a lot of times I do go find a picture. I will ask the families, what is your doctor's name? I will find a picture of that doctor, or if you have pictures of the actual waiting room dental office. That can go a long way for kids to be like, oh, I've seen this before. I know this place. This is exactly what I was expecting. So some kiddos really do better with that. Others respond just fine to like cartoons or clip art. And again, that's just knowing your child and sometimes a little bit of trial and error. And the last writing tip, edit as needed. A lot of times I'm putting more down and then editing out, writing down ideas and then narrowing down to the most important ones. So you want to think about your child's attention span and ability to just digest new information, then adjust accordingly. So sometimes older kids can sit through a longer story with a lot of different details. Some kiddos, they don't like sitting to read things. We only have a few minutes, a few pages, and they're going to get lost if we try to include too much. Oftentimes, we need to edit out potentially relevant information in order to focus on the most critical points. So again, are going to want to focus on giving a clear, consistent message, even if you're like, this detail seems relevant. If it's too much and it's not the most important point, sometimes we need to lose those things. The length of each section will vary depending on the child and the situation. So just like we pointed out with the dentist office, that what to expect was really long, right? That situation really called for that, whereas others, we might not need much in what to expect. That's not really in the important piece. So a lot of times it's helpful to think about your child's overall attention span. So like, how many pages do I think I can sit and get them to listen to? And say we were like 8 pages. I think that's all I've got. Decide where you want to give those 8 pages across the 4 sections. Where is the most important information? And let's really focus there. Okay. So with that said, I want to start going through the section. So we'll go over the instructions for section 1, and then we'll have a break where we will actually be drafting if you have a social story situation you want to write, or we'll be answering questions on how to write this first section after we go over this. So with that in mind, the first section we'll go after is what is happening and why. So briefly explain what is or will be happening and why that's taking place. So we're going to set the stage for understanding what will be expected. And again, even if something seems scary, it's probably important. We're not just doing that to be mean. We're not doing that to hurt them. So a few examples. The dentist one we already saw. The dentist is like a doctor for my teeth. They help keep my teeth big and strong. The second one is for a kiddo who was starting preschool for the first time when he wasn't going to a school program regularly. So again, this was when we kept pretty short. This was a little kiddo, right? So we really kept only what we needed here. So I'm going to start school. School helps me learn and become super smart. And that's all we did in this section for that kiddo. This next one is for a kiddo that didn't understand why people might come into his house. He kind of had this idea that I'm at my house, you live in your house, why would you come to my house? And did not respond well when that happened. And so setting the stage for why that would be the case. Sometimes people come visit at my house to say hi to me. This could be friends, neighbors, or family members. This is because they want to be nice and spend time together. So that's kind of the why section. This last one is kind of a longer example, just to show a situation where you might want to give a little more in this first one. So this last one is for a substitute teacher. So my teacher's name is Mrs. Smith. Most days, Mrs. Smith teaches my class. Sometimes Mrs. Smith needs to be somewhere else. Teachers get sick, and this was across multiple pages. This was an older kiddo this was written for who could sit a little longer. So this is a longer paragraph you see here, but this text was split up when you think about the visual presentation. Teachers get sick. Mrs. Smith may get sick. She may need to stay home. Teachers go on vacation sometimes. Mrs. Smith could go on vacation. Teachers go to teacher classes to learn sometimes. Mrs. Smith may go to a teacher class. Okay, so why would I have a time when Mrs. Smith is not here like usual? So a couple more examples we'll look over, and we'll see these ones kind of repeatedly throughout sections, just so you can see visually how you might present these. Then first one, another popular social story, new school year can be tough for a lot of kiddos. So the what is happening and why. Last year I was in first grade, for example. My teacher was Mrs. Smith. I worked very hard in first grade and now I am finished with it. First grade is all done. Since I worked so hard in first grade, I got to have a break during the summer. I had a lot of fun this summer. Since I am older now, I will be in second grade. My teacher will be Mr. Johnson. This is a pretty big change. So that's setting the stage, and we'll pick up from there in the next section. The second one was for a blood draw. This is a little more similar to that dentist situation. So this section was only a page, one page for this one. So I'm going to have my blood drawn. This is important so the doctors can make sure my body is healthy and strong. And that was really all we needed for the why here. This last one, a little more abstract social situation on sharing, and again was split across 3 pages. So sometimes friends seek cool toys that they all want to play with. Sometimes there are enough toys for everyone, but other times there are more friends than there are toys. If one friend played with the toy, the other might feel sad. It wouldn't be fair. Nice friends make sure everyone gets a chance to play. That way, everyone gets to have fun. So several different examples there of how we might explain that first section, what is happening and why. Section 2 is what should they expect to happen? So describe what will take place so children know what to happen. Preparing ahead of time helps them know what to expect and reduces anxiety in new situations. We will want to describe both good and bad aspects of the situation. And I think that's really critical. Resist the urge to leave out parts that you think would be unpleasant or scary. Again, same rationale as not preparing in advance. Any negative reaction to the story we'll really think would be less intense than a reaction to the actual situation when it's there, especially if it's a surprise, and it's going to be easier to talk about and prepare for in a calm moment at home rather than during a potential like public outing or event. And many times instead, we might want to purposely include information about the parts of the situation that might be most challenging. So for example, if a child struggles with the sensory elements of a dentist appointment or haircut, I would go out of your way to describe the different sights, sounds, smells, feelings that they should expect and how long each of those will last. Knowing what's coming next is really going to help them control their reactions in the moment. And I always think of it like spoiling a scary movie. We're scary movie fans, my husband and I, at our house. And if someone says like, oh, the guy's about to jump out, you're like, thanks, it's not scary now, right? In this case, we intentionally want to do that. If you know what is about to happen, it is much less scary. So a lot of times when I'm working with families for this section, we really start with the most challenging things. So when they tell me, oh, I want to create one for this situation, a lot of times I start by going like, okay, why are you worried about that situation? What are you worried might go wrong? For section 2 and 3, those are some of the places we might actually want to start with and really cover most thoroughly. So some examples, this was, again, the kiddo who was starting preschool for the first time. At school, I'll meet new friends. So we are covering some of the good aspects. We don't want to discourage them from going to the situation. Definitely hit the highlights too. I will have a teacher named Mr. Johnson. I'll need to listen to what Mr. Johnson says. Now getting to some of the more scary parts, right? This is a kiddo starting a structured preschool for the first time. Mom's not going. It's a whole day he's going without his parents. That's one of the scariest aspects here. So we really let him know that. So I will go to school by myself. Mom will drop me off at school and she will come get me when I'm all done. At school, I will learn new things and get to play. Some things are fun at school, but some things are hard work. So again, want to make him a little excited, like school's fun. It's got some fun things, but setting a clear expectation. Sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't want to do at school. That's part of school. The second one is a little shorter. This was for a kiddo that had a lot of kind of immediate separation anxiety, was not responding well anytime mom just went into a different room at home and really would kind of panic that she was gone. So what to expect in this situation was more like when mommy goes into a different room, she will be right back. That means she'll be back very soon. She will not leave the house without telling me. So setting a clear expectation there. This last one is going back to the substitute teacher. Again, this was originally written for a kiddo with a little bit, little older, a little longer attention span. So we covered a few different things and contingencies here. Some of the things might be edited out that aren't, they could be helpful, but aren't critical for a child who might be younger. And if we're going to lose them and they're not going to get any of the information, if we try to do too much, it might be better to lose it. In this case, we covered a lot of different things here because there are a lot of different things that could happen with a substitute. So a different teacher will teach my class if Mrs. Smith has to be somewhere else. This is called a substitute teacher or a sub. The substitute is a teacher just like Mrs. Smith. They're there to help Mrs. Smith and help the class. The substitute will do some things the same as Mrs. Smith, but some things may be different. So really getting in at that juncture, the what to expect parts. Some of the things are going to be different, which I think is what makes a substitute really hard for some kiddos, especially for kiddos on the spectrum. That's okay. We can be okay in just kind of setting that social norm. It can be okay to do things differently. Sometimes I will know ahead of time that Mrs. Smith has to miss school and that I will have a substitute. Other times that might be a surprise. Sometimes Mrs. Smith will be gone for only one day, but sometimes she might be gone for longer. Sometimes I'll have the same substitute I've had before, but sometimes it'll be a new person. So again, we covered a lot of different options there as far as what to expect. Try to cover all the bases so we don't promise something that doesn't end up happening. Any way that those happen, again, those are all okay. Those are all normal things that we can be calm about. Either way, a substitute will teach our class until Mrs. Smith gets back. Mrs. Smith will be back in school as soon as she can. Okay, so returning just to see these kind of how you might lay this out visually to our same three examples from before. So going back to the new school year example. So this particular one, I kind of framed what to expect as what things should you expect to be the same? What things should you expect to be different? So the first page there, not everything will change. We had ended the section before of it's going to be a big change to be in a new year, a new school year, and have a new teacher picking up. Not everything's going to change. Some things will be in second grade will be just like they were in first grade. So again, these are examples that may or may not fit for everyone, but some examples you could cover here. My mom or dad will still pick me up each day and drop me off, or I will still take the bus to school each morning, whichever one of those is appropriate for your child. I will still go, if you're still in the same school building as last year, but now just in a different classroom, I will still go to Pinecone Elementary School in the same building, if that's true. I will still have one classroom that I'll go to each morning, and the teacher will have a schedule that my classmates and I will need to follow during school time. There's probably many more things you could put there, but just trying to hit what are some of the major things that you can expect to be the same in general about school. Then we covered on the next page here, some things are going to be different in second grade this new year. So if we are going to a new school at the start of the school year, we'll drive to a new building each morning if that's true, and things that'll definitely be true. I will have new classmates. I will have a new teacher. If it was the same building with a different classroom, you might want to say something like, I will go to a different room each morning, instead of saying I will go to a new building each morning. So again, fit the situation, but kind of hit the highlights of what are the major changes we can expect here. For the blood draw one, kind of similarly to the dentist one, this is the longest section here by far. There are quite a few things we want to cover because this is what's tough about that situation, is the actual doing the different steps, right? And so this says, when it's time for my blood draw, I might go to a special room with the nurse and sit in a big chair. Again, I use a lot of words that give us wiggle room, like might or sometimes, because it's also possible that maybe this is just at the end of their doctor's appointment and the phlebotomist just comes into the room you were in and does it right there, right? And so again, we don't want to promise anything that then goes differently. That could really throw kids from the start and make this worse rather than better. And that's certainly not what we want. So I always try to give a little bit of wiggle room if I'm not completely certain about something. So when it's time for my blood draw, I might go into a special room with the nurse and sit in a big chair. I will roll up my sleeve so the nurse can see my arm. The nurse will tie a stretchy band around my arm. The band's a little tight, but it doesn't hurt. The nurse might ask me to make a fist or squeeze a ball. It's important that I listen and follow directions. The nurse will clean my arm with a small wipe. It might feel cold or smell a little funny, just to expect that. I used to work in a particular research study where we did blood draws as a part of it on pretty young children. And I can't tell you how many children I saw panic and start screaming at the little alcohol wipe touching them, even though you know it doesn't hurt, but like it was the most painful thing in the world because they're already so ramped up. They weren't expecting that. And they're like, oh, someone has put hands on me, right? And they weren't expecting it. And so just knowing this is the next step that's coming, this is not the actual poke yet, it's not going to hurt, can really reduce that reaction. Next, I will feel a small pinch. It might hurt just a little. So avoid that little white lie, right, of saying it's not going to hurt at all. It does hurt a little bit. But being honest, if you are still, it hurts to get your blood drawn when they first put the needle in. It doesn't continue to hurt as long as you stay still. And so I think that's an honest statement we can make. It does hurt a little bit, but it's done quickly. It only hurts for a moment as long as I stay still and keep my body calm. So this might hurt just a little, but it will be done quickly, and I am very brave. I can stay still and try to keep my body calm. The nurse will collect a tiny bit of blood into a little bottle. I have lots of blood in my body, so it's okay to give some away. I don't have to watch if I don't want to. So those last two are ones that I would say, know your child. Is your child someone that might be concerned about blood being removed from their body? If not, we probably don't need that statement. Same thing with watching versus not watching. I, as an adult, do not like to watch the actual needle go into my arm when I get a blood draw. Some people are unbothered by it. So I would only include what you think is helpful and relevant for your child. When the nurse is done, she might put a small piece of cotton and a bandage on my arm. That's it. I'm all done getting my blood drawn. Okay, so a little bit longer in this situation. And I realize these are pretty small here, but each of these pages, again, the visuals actually have each of these steps happening, the cotton wipe, the bandage. And so it really kind of can aid the comprehension of what's happening. This last one, what to expect, is for the sharing one. For this one, as you can see, the what to expect really kind of overlaps with the next section, what they should do. And again, that's okay. I wouldn't be worried if you're not feeling like you have completely separate things for each section. Some situations don't clearly have separate things. So what to expect here, I can be a nice friend by taking turns. When it's my turn, I will get a chance to play. When it's my friend's turn, I can wait for it to be my turn again. So just kind of generally what to expect about how sharing works. Some of the parents in my breakout group, section 3, what should they do? What's the appropriate behavior we want them to see? In pre-made materials, what they should expect is usually covered pretty well. A lot of times this is more what could be missing depending on the situation. I think in pre-made social materials, this tends to be covered pretty well. But if we're thinking more about like problematic behaviors and situations, going to the doctor, going to the airport, someone just brought up, this section isn't usually covered as much in depth there. And I do think it's a critically important section. So we want to describe the appropriate behavior we would like to see. We want to let them know how to succeed in this new situation, what rules are important to follow, do they need to say or do anything specific, how do they navigate this successfully. And I do like to plan for the worst. I usually can call this last part my break glass in case of emergency statement. So we try to think of what are all the different things that could happen, but we can't cover everything. And so to give them like, if I start getting nervous, if things start going not as expected, what should they do? Because I think the last thing we want to do is to cover a situation pretty well, have a kid be like, I'm prepared, I'm ready for this. Something that was not addressed in their story happens. They have no idea what to do, and then they're thrown into a full tailspin panic. So we want to try to cover situations like that. So we want to give them a plan for any predictably challenging aspects of the situation. What should they do if things start to get tough? But even things that aren't predictable, right? Give some more general statements of, if I'm nervous, here's what we know you can do. So prevent that further panic if they start getting scared, and provide specific options of what they can do if they start getting upset, nervous, or frustrated. So a lot of times asking a parent or teacher for help, if it's an older kiddo who's able to do any kind of coping skills, mentioning those things like taking deep breaths, some common examples that come up. So some examples here, the substitute teacher example again, I should listen to my substitute just like I usually listen to Mrs. Smith. I can help the substitute, Mrs. Smith, and my classmates by being on my best behavior for the substitute. I can stay calm even if things are different than usual. So substitutes are something that I hear is challenging for a lot of my kiddos. And it's mostly just, it's different. And I feel different because it's different than usual. So we're really just trying to set this expectation. It's different. It's okay. You should still act like normal. You should still follow the teacher's directions, try to stay calm, proceed in a normal way. This second one here is about a kiddo who had an issue with words. Other people are saying, I think this needs a little context. These are not like someone being unkind. This was a child who had certain totally normal words. I think actually kids was one of them. If he heard the word kids, he would get really upset. So they were very like normal, appropriate words that he had decided he did not like and would get really mad if other people used them. So these are not like curse words or mean words for context. So this one says, I do not get to choose words for anyone but myself. It is okay if mommy or other people use words I don't like to use. I should stay calm and be nice when other people use words that make me upset. If I hear words that make me upset, I should remember that everyone gets to pick their own words. I can take a break, play by myself, or do 3, 2, 1, breathe if I am feeling upset about other people's words. So again, if this was a child that I was concerned was hearing unkind words or that was an issue anywhere in their life, I probably would not have phrased this way. But given that this was a kiddo where this was the common issue, I had no concerns anyone was saying like verbally unkind things for him. This was really what we wanted him to do here. This last one is about a birthday party. And so what are the things we need to do at a birthday party? So I have to wait to eat the cake until I am told to. Since it's Susie's birthday, the presents are for her. She gets to choose when and what things she wants to play with. I should be flexible. And this was a kiddo who knew that word. Not all kids would, but I should be flexible and do the activities that everyone else wants to do since it is not my party. I should be nice and respectful to everyone at the party so they want to play with me again. Should be careful of my personal space and not touch other people. or their things. And it's also important that I say hi and bye to everyone and use my nice words. So this is kind of a long list. The parent that I wrote this with felt strongly about all of these, but we did edit down even to land on this. But this is one, this kiddo is very bright. I did think he could handle this list. Other kiddos, I think we would need to narrow this down to the most important things. Birthday party is one I've written for a lot of different contexts. This is one at someone's house, but farm, laser tag, and again, starting with what do you think could go wrong? Like, what are you worried about? I had a kiddo who's going to like a laser tag or a jump around trampoline kind of place, something like that. I can't quite remember. And I remember that mom going, oh, when we go new places, he likes to run and look in every door, like the storage closet and all these things. It's the first thing he does when he goes to a new place. I was like, let's start there. That's the first thing I'm going to write in here. So again, sometimes starting with what are you most worried could happen? The first thing we wrote was, I need to stay in the rooms they told me I should stay in, right? If it's at someone's house, staying in the rooms other than the bathroom, but like we don't want Mr. and Mrs. Jones all of a sudden to find Bobby in their bedroom during the birthday party, right? You need to stay in the rooms we're in unless you're going to the bathroom probably. So really trying to give concrete rules around those things that if you anticipate that would be a problem. Okay, so going back to our same 3 examples here. So new school year, what do we want them to do? While I'm at school, I can help my teacher by listening and following directions. I can also learn new things this way and become super smart. I can make new friends by playing and sharing with my classmates. So a little bit bleeding into that next section, making that connection to the natural positive consequences along with each of these things. This next one is really on what do we do if I'm upset, break glass in case of emergency, page 2 here. So school might be a lot of fun, but sometimes things might happen that make me upset, frustrated, or afraid. It might feel scary at first to be in a new place, but it's okay. My teacher is nice and is there to help me. So for any kiddo that's really like panicking, not because anything's happened, but just because I'm somewhere new and I'm worried about that, remembering this is a safe place, I can try to stay calm here. I might miss my mom and dad, but I'll see them again very soon. So some reminders here that they can kind of repeat back. And that's where using that consistent language, if you hear as you're dropping your child off, I'm going to miss you, I'm worried about not seeing you, kind of saying, remember, I'll see you again soon. Since I'm getting older, I'm getting better at being in charge of my feelings too. And this wouldn't be appropriate for all kiddos. Like probably that preschool kiddo couldn't do this, but for an older kiddo, for 2nd grade, in some cases, if they're able to do some kind of basic coping skills or that's something they're aware of, something like taking deep breaths, remembering they're safe, asking teacher for help, things like that, and a visual that goes along with that. Blood draw, what we want them to do, pretty simple, similar to dentist, right? It's important that we stay still and keep my body calm while the nurse is drawing my blood. This keeps me safe, and the pinch also hurts less, and I'll be done faster if I stay still. A helper might hold my arm still so that I'm safe. Again, if someone did need to do that, we don't want a kiddo that's more panicked, all of a sudden like, someone's holding me down. No one told me someone was going to hold me down. So establishing that's okay. Sometimes we do that to stay safe and help you stay still. If I'm nervous, I can take deep breaths, think about things I like, and remember that I'll be done very soon. And this, again, where individualization is important. Not all kids, not really young kids probably wouldn't be able to do those things. Kids that are a little bit older can remember to do things like take a deep breath in the moment. On sharing, again, I have the slide from before because there's kind of some overlap, so I can be a nice friend by taking turns. When it's my turn, I'll get a chance to play. When it's my friend's turn, I can wait for it to be my turn again. I think a lot of kids that have a hard time with sharing have been told those basics and we're still having a hard time. So these next 2 pages here, I talked through the mom I was making this with. When do things go awry? What's difficult here? And so the obvious one, waiting for your turn or when your turn ends. So it can be hard to wait for my turn. It can also be disappointing when my turn ends. If I'm having a hard time, I can ask a grown-up for help or pick a different toy, which is really what we're going to want them to do in that moment, right? And so we can remind them in that moment if they need. Do you need help? Should we pick a different toy? Picking, even when kiddos want to share, sometimes deciding who gets the first turn is a holdup. So it can be hard to figure out who gets a turn first. Fair ways to decide, asking an adult for help. And again, this particular kiddo knew how to play rock, paper, scissors, or eeny, meeny, miny, moe. So that those would be fair ways to decide and get this ball rolling. Just this final section is probably the easiest one here. So what's in it for them? Very frequently, this is only one page for me in social stories I write. But we do want to end on a high note and describe any reinforcers or rewards that they can earn for meeting behavioral expectations. I like to leave kids like kind of pumped up, like I can do it and I can get all these good things if I do it. So try to motivate your child to succeed. So many situations include natural social reinforcers. I always like to comment on those, making parents proud. I think I write as the minimum in almost every single social story I write. Having friends to play with in the future, following a successful social outing, learning things at school, being strong and healthy after the doctor or the dentist, having a cool new haircut after your hair appointment, any of these kind of natural positive reinforcers. And then if you are planning to give your child any special rewards for good behavior during this event, let them know ahead of time. So if anyone did go to any of my behavior workshops or in general with behavior, I'm all about using praise when you can for behavior and saving the big guns, I always call them, like an actual tangible reward, treats, things like that for when you need them. That said, if you are taking the time to write a social story about a given situation, this is probably a fairly challenging situation for your child. It might warrant kind of a big guns reward. And so these might be extra challenging situations where this is worth considering. Do I want to give them a special treat if they successfully complete this or navigate this? So if you are considering adding a special tangible reward, like a trip to the park or a sweet treat, definitely let them know that. Those things are not going to be effective motivators if they don't know that they might happen. That might help us for next time because they learned that from last time, but it's not going to motivate them if they don't know what they can get contingently. So it's not always possible or appropriate to add things like that. But again, they might make sense if children tackle a particularly big challenge. And some situations do have small rewards built into them, like a treasure chest at the dentist or a sticker at the doctor's office. So trying to think of anything we can to, again, keep them motivated. Motivation is key to success in learning or any critical situation here. So some examples. This is from the birthday party one. If I am nice to everyone and get along with everyone, Susie and my classmates will want to play with me again and might invite me to more parties. Mommy and that one I definitely added might for because, you know, this was written for a child on the spectrum. Even if he does his best and stays calm, he may or may not get invited to more birthday parties, right? And so I think we don't want to promise things we can't be sure of. Being careful about your wording, knowing that child in that situation for something like that. Mommy and daddy will also be really proud of me if I listen carefully to all the rules and get along with everyone. I think you could add something like, I'll have fun, everyone will have lots of fun at the party if I am nice and follow all the rules. At school, I'll have fun meeting new friends and having new toys to play with. This was for the little boy starting preschool. I will be a big boy going to school and learn new things just like my sister does. So this was a child with an older sibling, and you know, younger siblings look up to their older siblings oftentimes, want to do the cool things that they do. So I'll be a big boy just like my sister. Mom and dad will be really proud of me if I'm a good listener. Definitely you could add things in here like I will learn, I will be really smart. Some of those are kind of sprinkled in the other sections of this one. This last one, or this third one, is a story we haven't covered yet. This is for a kiddo who sometimes they would stop fun places, or like 1 or 2 times they stopped at McDonald's or like a ice cream shop on the way home from school. And then that became the expectation and going straight home became a tantrum. And so we had written a social story about that. And so if I stay calm when we go straight home after school, I can earn playtime with mommy or a special treat. So we kind of added something, even if you don't get to do this cool other thing, if we see the appropriate behavior, I will get to do something fun at home to kind of outweigh that. Mommy will also be proud. Like I said, I almost always include that one. It's the low-hanging fruit to me. And listening to the substitute teacher one, staying calm will help me stay out of trouble and have a good day at school. No kids want to get in trouble. They do usually want to succeed and have a good day. Mommy will be really proud of me if I was on my best behavior. So to finish up these examples we've been looking at, example one, the new school year. So in second grade, I will have fun meeting new friends, learning new things, and having new toys to play with. So natural consequences there of what can happen at school. My mom and dad will be proud of me if I'm a good listener. In second grade, I can also learn new things. So I can grow up to be happy and super smart. The blood draw. Getting my blood drawn helps make sure my body is big and strong. My mom and dad will be very proud of me if I'm brave and stay still during the blood draw. I might even get a special prize when I'm done, something like a blood draw or a shot. That's something I commonly see parents getting their kid an actual tangible reward for if they are calm. And maybe they can have a candy or a sticker or a small toy or something. Again, it's up to you as a parent, but it's a big challenge for a lot of kiddos. So you might want to bring out the big guns. This last one, sharing. If I share, I'll be a nice friend. So there are a lot of natural social consequences in this one. No one will feel sad or left out. My friend will probably want to play with me again. Everyone will get a turn with the cool thing. I'll get a turn too. So all of those kind of natural rewards. And my mommy and daddy will be really proud of me for sharing and being a good friend. Let's cover quickly how to use your new social story, how we actually do this, and then I'll take questions. So I think that once we have this completed, it's really important. Social stories are best used to prepare, not to react. So we want to read the story to your child several times prior to the event, ideally during calm moments when they're best able to absorb and new information. Sometimes bedtime story right before bed is like a natural time we can talk about this, but a time that they're not distracted, they're not wound up, they're most able to hear you. It is not meant to be read immediately after a problem behavior has occurred or as a calming strategy in moments of distress. I would want to underline that. I should have bolded that one. I hear a lot of times parents have a social story, maybe a good one, and they pull it out when things have already gone wrong. And they're like, yeah, and then my child ripped it in half. No one, when they're already really mad, wants to be handed a book and being told, like, read this, right? That's not how this is best used. So this is to prepare ahead of time. In the moment, maybe give brief reminders, remind your child using the language again of what it was you wanted to see them do, what's going to happen. That's not the time to try to teach them new information. They're not going to be listening. So prepare, not react, and then pilot the story and then adjust. So I had the question, how frequently should I read this? It really depends on the kiddo and how involved and complicated the situation was. But I would say like a common baseline frequency. I gave the examples like for a birthday party, for a dentist appointment, a doctor's appointment, like one specific situation that's going to happen a couple weeks in advance. Like 2 to 3 times a week for 1 to 2 weeks ahead of time is like a starting point I would give to a lot of families in situations like that, and then kind of adjust from there. I did mention I've had certain kiddos that we are like preparing for a multi-stage surgery for. We started that 6 months in advance, and there was actually like multiple different books involved with it. So it can depend a lot, but that is like the best rule of thumb I can give you. It's very different for different kids and situations though. I also like to read it once, try to watch the child. A lot of times when I do this with families, even if it's telehealth, I'll have them get the child and read it to them on camera, and I will watch the child and kind of see, are they listening? Are they interacting? Are they involved? Or are they just sitting there going, yeah, yeah. Do I think they're really getting it? So try and gauge your child's understanding and reaction, then edit the story or adjust the reading frequency depending on how your child responds. So a lot of times we'll draft this and then we'll find there's a certain word I picked that I thought my child knew, no idea what that meant. Or maybe we can fit some more information in. Maybe he's totally got it and there's other things that would be helpful for them to know. Maybe we can add them. So if they seem to understand immediately, maybe we don't need to read it 5 more times before the situation. Maybe just review once or twice. Maybe we can even add more information if we think it would be helpful. They seem to understand some of the story, but have trouble digesting all the information. They might benefit from reading it more frequently than this. If they don't seem to be gaining much from the story or to understand what you're saying, the story may need to be simplified. We might need to edit the actual story or adjust it to better suit their needs and motivations. And I would also, once you've covered it like once or twice, if you're not sure, consider asking simple like comprehension check questions as you go along. So if you've read this story 4 times, being like, okay, first we do this. Do you know what happens next? Or what should you do if you get upset? And see, can they tell you? Or if you ask them instead of just reading it to them, like, what is Mrs. Smith always in school or is she gone sometimes? If Mrs. Smith is gone, is it okay or should we be nervous? And just kind of seeing how they react to those things. Are they following along with you? Are they there? So references are here at the end for anyone who's interested, and then additional resources. Those materials will be sent out, I believe, tomorrow. Carol Gray, I mentioned, has books. She has a website. She has some free stuff on her website. There are some training, like self-learning modules you can do online from UNC and the National Professional Development Center on ASD, because this is an evidence-based practice. So there's links to those. Indiana Resource Center has a nice guideline on how to actually write. Power cards I mentioned are another type of social narrative if you want information on those. And even though I like individualization in a pinch, there are lots of libraries of free pre-made social narratives out there. So I have a few links to those. They can also be helpful starting places, even if you add some of your own things. So these will all be in there when I send this out.
I'm going to wrap it up, and I really appreciate all you spending your evening with us. I'm looking forward to the next trainings. Please visit our website to be familiar with our calendar of events. Thank you, Dr. Abby, Dr. Lynn. Thank you, Nadia, and the interpreters for being with us tonight, and the rest of the team and the parents and providers who are with us. See you until the next training, and have a good evening. Good night.
Thank you all. Hope it was helpful. Have a good evening.